Hello there and welcome to Top Channel 101, and today we're going to be looking at how to create a procedural planet using geometry nodes. So this is like a beginner tutorial or a beginner course for geometry nodes. It can help you understand geometry nodes and how to use it to create advanced things in Blender. And so the planet we're going to be creating here is what you're seeing here, and everything about it is procedural from the islands or continents. If you change the value here, you can see the islands change, and you can also animate these to make it seem like a continental drift. The clouds are also animated, so if I play back here, you can see the clouds are moving and the water is also moving. The water is done using a material shader, and the clouds are also done using a material shader, but they're all procedural. If I come to the clouds here, you can expose more parameters like the clouds and everything, and see you can make less clouds or more clouds. They also cast shadows on the surface, which is great. And you can see also, if I reduce the density down, you see that the planet also has an atmosphere, which we'll also see how to do. If you zoom in closely, you see that we have some trees and some houses in there. All procedural. You can expose again those parameters. I chose not to because I just wanted to do this very quickly. Yeah, this one adds more houses. Yeah, if you want the project files, all the links are going to be in the description. You can get the project file on my Patreon page. My Patreon page starts at $3. Hopefully that is not too expensive, and you're able to get the project files if you want. And you'll also be able to get other project files in the future. You can also join my YouTube membership. I will also be adding this to my YouTube members as well. So let's jump in and start working on this. The shader for the water and the shader for the continent is based off geometry nodes. As you can see that when I update this, you can see the coast of the continent, the materials change a bit as well. It has that almost sandy beach style, and the inside parts of the continent have the green vegetation as you would expect for a planet. Yeah, same for the water. You can see the middle parts of the ocean look a bit deeper. Middle parts of the oceans appear deeper than where the planets are. Okay, so let's start by adding a plane. This is going to hold the geometry nodes. So let's create a new project here. I'm just going to expand this a bit. So to create the planet, we're using a volume to generate the islands, and that's what I'm going to show as well here. We're going to use a volume cube here. And the reason we're using a volume cube is because it has a density that can be controlled by a noise texture. So if I add a noise texture and plug it into the density, you can see that the volume is getting influenced by the noise texture, giving us a 3D mesh that has holes in it. Let me show you what I mean here. If I change the volume back to a mesh, you can see, and let me just scale up the noise a bit and add some contrast by using a color ramp. You can see we are adding holes into our volume and then turning it into a mesh and giving us this. That can be great for creating islands. Now, maybe I could scale this up. Now, the shape of what we have here of our planet is a cube, which is, maybe that's what you want, but for most people, they want a spherical planet. Okay, so to do a spherical planet, we need the volume to be a sphere instead of a cube. So let me disable this for a bit. And let me remove the density for a bit as well. So we need a way to turn this into a sphere volume instead of a volume cube. So to do that, there are several ways. You can use a gradient texture, connect the factor to the density, change the type here to spherical, and that gives us a spherical gradient. You can scale this gradient by using a position node, connect that in here, and use a vector math with the operation scale, and that lets you control the size of the planet. And if I turn this back on, you can see we get a sphere that can be controlled directly here. Now we have the sphere, but we also have this noise. What we can do now is just subtract this noise from this sphere, like we are trying to create a Boolean operation indent to add dents into this sphere. So we can use a sphere and use a math node to subtract the noise we have here. And then we should have, if I turn this back on, we should have something like this, a planet like this. You can already see where the continents are going to be. And I guess this could also work as a rock generator. And if you want to increase the resolution of this mesh, all you have to do is come under here and play with this resolution to make this more crisp. Or you can even use a float value. Just type in value to control these three at once, like that. Let me make sure that I'm saving. Okay, so you can use this to control the depth of your continent. And don't forget about the scale of the original sphere if you want to adjust it as well. If you push it too hard, you'll start to hit the boundaries of the original volume cube. So make sure you don't push it too hard. So yeah, that's going to be our planet. So to add the oceans, what we're going to do is use a sphere, a UV sphere. So let's add that. Now we're going to just join this directly. Let me just join this directly to this. Now if we preview this now, we need to reduce the radius, and we can have something like that. Yeah. Now we can set smooth, make the continent look smoother, shade smooth, yeah, like that. And give the continents a smoother shade as well, like that. One other thing we could do is give the continents a bit of bumps so that we have some hills and some valleys. To do that, we can come, just make some space before the shade smooth, and we can grab a set position and a noise texture, another noise texture like this, and a normal node. So if you use the normal into the offset, it will just push everything out. If you use a vector math, and basically what this normal is doing is what you would see, let's say if we have a Suzanne here and you use Alt S, it just pushes the faces along their normals, pushing them outside, getting that. So that's what this normal node is doing. And now we can use the scale to control the strength of what it's doing. Now, instead of just using a single value here, you can plug in the noise texture, and it will give you random value like that. So let's also bring this scale a bit down, and also you could use a math node here, change the operation to multiply so that we can control the strength of the noise as well. So let's just bring this quite a lot down. That we can first disable, just preview this, see how this noise is influencing everything. Shade smooth. Another thing I'm noticing is that the noise is also being added to the depth to the ocean parts. I want the noise to just affect the continent part. So what I'm going to do is we can use this sphere setup, this spherical setup, this gradient setup. If you remember, we're using this gradient to create a selection of the volume we wanted to keep, and we can also use it to create a selection of the vertices or points we want the noise to affect. So I can just grab this, connect it to the selection, and changing the scale here will affect what parts of the planets I want. And if I look at this, preview this, just connect the geometry here, you can see how the gradient is working here. By increasing it, I'm increasing the influence of this noise. And, you can see that's what we get. Maybe increase the noise a bit. I think we might want to invert this, so I'm just going to use color ramp to invert the selection like that. So I can connect this to the selection. Now if we preview this, bring back the noise, you can see that it's now affecting just the continents. Now the reason why you're not seeing that much detail is because we don't have enough geometry in our on our continent. So I can add a subdivide mesh here, so we can start to see more detail in our continent. So our noise will also have more to displace. So something like that. And if you want, you can even add more detail by adding so these are small details, but we can also add, let's first bring this here, can create another set position, and basically just copy this here. Now what we're trying to do is create some mountains out of this, so I can add this this time around. Just scale this up quite a lot and just bring the noise down, and I think we can add some contrast using a color ramp. To create some mountains, which I didn't do in the original version, but I think, yeah, that's, you try Voronoi, see. Yeah, I want to try Voronoi just to see how this would work. Yeah, I think using Voronoi gives you better mountains. Yeah, they appear sharper and taller, so that's what we're going to use. And just like that. Yeah, so we have some mountain ranges, which is nice. So I want to be able to switch between the water and the continents, so I'm going to use a switch node so that I have a version where there is no water. So I think I can, it would be this here and this here. I can turn off the water so that I can look at the planets just like that. So that I can look at the continents alone. So we can start working on some materials. And to do that, we are going to use the mask we have created here. So I can start with, let's see, we had this mountain. We had some mountains here. So if I look at this, you can see these are mountain ranges. So I'm going to store this data, store this mask into a named attribute. I'll call this mountains, like that. Just store this mask. And if I go to the shader editor here, create a new material. I'll call this planet, continent, and go to the input attributes or attribute. I can just copy this, paste it in here. If I remove this preview, I should be able to just preview. If I go to the material section, I should be able to preview. So named attribute. Oh, I need to connect this into the value. Let's see. And to be able to preview this, I need to give the continent material I've just added in. So I need to connect this here and disable this. So I need to set this as the material for the continent so that we can see the attribute there. We also need the attribute for just the continents. So I can come to about, I think this. That's not that. I think it is this. Yeah, you can see this gives us a mask for the continents. So I can add a store named attribute, connect this value there, and call this continents, just like that. So when I duplicate this, copy this attribute, I should be able to see the continents attribute, and it should be, yeah, we should be able to see that quite easily. Then what else do we need? We have the continent, we have the mountains. I think we also need a mask for the actual depth of the lakes. So let's do from around here. To get the depth of the lakes, we can use a gradient node with the sphere option. If I preview this, you can see it gives us quite easily the depth of the continents like that. So I can just use a store about here, call this ocean depth. So we also need a new material for the water or oceans. So I'll create an ocean material and set it to the ocean, just like that. So we can start working on the material. So for the water, we can start with the ocean material, which is simple. We can give this a blue material like that. And we can also use the ocean depth here, ocean depth, copy that, paste it here. But we're not seeing any effect here. We're not seeing the attribute here because this is a different geometry from this. So the ocean data is not really transferred to this mesh because this is a different sphere or a different geometry from this. So we don't really have this data onto this geometry since this is a completely separate node tree or branch from this. So what we can do to have the same data, to have the ocean depth onto this sphere, onto the ocean sphere, is that we can use proximity. You can use a proximity node. Yeah, so I can just, and the target is going to be this sphere, and we want to look at the depth. We want to look at the value. So you can see with this, we're able to get the position of the continents onto the ocean sphere, which we couldn't really do in this using this instance. We also need a bit of geometry, more geometry onto this sphere, so I can so that we have more resolution in this mask. So I'm going to add more segments. So let's do, we can use, instead of a UV sphere, we can use a cube because it's divided better than a UV sphere if you add a subdivision surface. So level 4 maybe like that. You can see we get better distribution of vertices compared to what we get with that. So now this is going to be our new ocean depth. So I can use a store named attribute, and the attribute is going to be this distance, and the name is going to be ocean depth 2. So this is going to work now for the ocean sphere. So now I can get rid of this. The only issue is that we also have to change the radius or the scale of this. So I can use a value here to control this vector, so I can scale it out. And you can see it gives us a really good mask of the ocean as we scale it. So yeah, because it's using the proximity node, basically checking how close the vertices of the continents are to the ocean, and then creating a mask out of that, which we are transferring to this attribute here. So we have our water. We can use this with a color ramp and just set some ocean colors, so we can have a deeper blue for the depth for the deeper areas, and a lighter blue the deeper areas. If you look closely, I don't know if I added waves, but we can even add waves to these small waves around the ocean. So I can just have another node here, make this really tight, and just have white waves closer to the ocean, just like that. This could be just a mask, and I just blend the two. This can be color 1, and I just use a multiply. Now we have that. I can connect this to the base, bring down the reflections, grab a noise texture, connect that to a bump, connect that to a normal map, scale this down a bit and scale up the noise. Just bring that down. I think I need the water to be a bit greenish, I think. Yeah, so we have the water ready now. Now let's go to the, this is supposed to be screen, not multiply. So we can have some waves on the water. Okay, now let's go to the continent. Continent, we should first get, we can get a noise texture, connect that to the base. If we preview that, we just give this a color ramp, give it some green areas, and so this some brown areas and some really of course it depends, or this is going to depend on what you want. Yeah, so something like that. Play with the detail. Okay. Something like that. That we have this mask here. I think it's the continent mask. I can use a math node. I can just use a color ramp here to control the shores. So then I can just blend this, use this as the factor. This is color 1. I need to make sure that only the shores or the coast, because I want to give this a beach or sand like color. Maybe something like that. And now remember, this is all procedure. So if I go back to the original noise, is it this? Yeah, you can see I need to change this to 4D. So changing this value just gives us a new lake, new islands, new everything like that. Now let's do the mountains. It takes the color of the mountains. So we have this mountain mask. We can make it more sharp. So by using a color ramp. Yeah, so we can isolate the mountains quite easily. Yeah, just like that. And all we need to do is just mix this, use this as the factor, and this we can give them a mountain like color. Maybe you can even use texture of some sort. I'll just keep it simple. Yeah, make these darker, something like that. Yeah, to kind of make them look like mountains. I guess I need to play with the contrast here. Maybe use a math node here. Change this to power, and you can even go back to where the mountain attribute was created and just play with those values as well if you want more mountains. I'll just keep it like that. You can even add some noise to the roughness as well, so that it's not a uniform color. Yeah, just like that. And maybe another noise to the bump for some bump detail. Just reduce the strength down. A bit rough. And maybe add a math node to the roughness. So that's more rough. Of course, these settings you can play with and see what gives you the best result. I'm going to add ambient occlusion, bloom, screen space reflections, and go to the sky, use a Nishita, or use a sky texture like this. We'll turn the bloom a bit down. Now the sky, let's remove these nodes. Turn the intensity down as well, maybe, and maybe even add a sun to this. Let me go back to the water, just make it a little more reflective. Reduce the bump. And see what we have. Yeah, we're getting close. Okay, these bumps are more, I think, are bigger, which makes it look better. So let's try that. Bumps here. Yeah, something like that. You can play with the colors by yourself. Let's see, what else do we need to do? We can do the clouds. So the clouds are just a simple cube with a UV sphere and just deformed a few times randomly like that. And then I use, let me see, I just use a diffuse, a translucence with a transparency, blend the two, and then I use layer weight as a mask. So just use the facing. You can see now it gives us a soft cloud like that. We need to turn on back facing, I think. Show back face. Yeah, you can see now we get that perfect cloud like that. Now I think I'm going to apply the subdivisions. What I could do now, I can mix in a noise texture. I can mix in a noise texture into this. Use a math node here, connect this here, and you can see now we have clouds. Let's play with the roughness, detail level. And we have a cloud that is affected by the direction of the light. So if I turn on the light, it should affect the cloud because we have translucent in this. So now to add the cloud to this, all we need to do is go to the ocean sphere, which is this, and then yeah, I think this is the ocean sphere. Yeah, and then just use a transform node. This should duplicate the ocean sphere. I can even do this before we have the material set up. So we have the ocean sphere like that. We need it to be scaled and maybe joined to the original mesh to the planet. So here. Joined here. So if we scale this out, you can see it's scaling outside like that. And what we're going to do is just instance on points, distribute points on faces like this, and the instance is going to be our cloud. So you just drag the cloud, connect that in, and we see what we have. You can randomize the scale using a random value. Now you can see we now have clouds on here, and we can reduce the density of the clouds just like that. And I need to make sure that the origin is centered for the cloud. So yeah, give this a value of 10. Now let's change the rotation of the sun a bit, maybe. Now you can see this also works in cycles just fine. And if you want to animate the clouds, you just have to animate the rotation, this rotation here, and you should get the clouds animated. The trees, you do the same trick, but this time you just change the instance to the tree. Same for the house. You can yeah, so I think that concludes everything. Again, like I said, the trees are just the same technique for the clouds, but yeah, that's how I did this. So thank you for watching. If you want the project file, it's going to be available on my Patreon and on my YouTube membership, available to my YouTube members as well. So see you and thank you.